everyone. Thank you for tuning in to today's episode of Grilled. On this episode, I'm joined by Dr. Stephen Murphy, the president of University of Ontario Institute of Technology, the recently rebranded OnTechU. Today, Dr. Murphy talks about how the school has undertaken some amazing innovations to bring the classrooms online during this new normal, and how those new innovations will also proceed to add value to the education that the school is able to provide in the coming years. We also talk about how the university is partnering with municipal governments and regional governments to support testing in a really interesting and new way, and also small businesses and people at home in the region. I hope you guys like this episode as much as I enjoyed filming it and learn as much as I did as well. Thank you. Well, thank you for joining me today, Dr. Stephen Murphy. I appreciate your time. How are you doing on this fine day?
I'm doing well. I'm doing very well. I think we're all adjusting to this working remotely, and I think that in each of the meetings where you can see people's faces, it brings a little bit of humanity into our lives, and that's really important to connect with people. So we're doing that across the university. I know people are doing that right across society, and we're all waiting for things to open up a little bit, but I think by and large, we've done pretty well as a society, given the scale of the change and how much we're all trying to help flatten the curve. I commend us for taking it seriously and for it being a lot better than it could have been.
Definitely. It does seem like things are moving towards a better situation in terms of the curve and health. And I think everybody's working really hard, and particularly OTU these days. So what is kind of, for people who are a little bit less familiar with the school in general, what is the story of OTU and in your role there?
Sure. So at Ontario Tech, of course, a lot of people would know that we rebranded. So we're still officially the University of Ontario Institute of Technology, but the UOIT acronym has been replaced by Ontario Tech, and we've been extremely busy around COVID. So our immediate response to that, of course, was to think, how can we start to help the front lines? And it was a multi-pronged approach. We started producing through our 3D printers, designed and developed at Ontario Tech, designs around face shields. That grew so popular and had such demand that we're now producing them with partners at OPG and with GM, and with other partners. We still have a ventilator project in a similar rapid prototype design and build situation, which is moving into production. Similarly, we moved some of our nursing students. We moved all of their graduation up so that they could join the front lines, because of course their schooling was finished in April. So the sooner that we could get them done and graduated without a convocation ceremony, the better. So we moved on that. We've got a lot of students who have volunteered to be a part of the manufacturing that we're doing of face shields and getting them into hospitals in Durham, in Northumberland, in Toronto proper itself. So that's felt like a really strong contribution. And then the latest project is one that's just getting underway, which is about wastewater and about analyzing COVID intensity in wastewater or sewer water, which can be applied either in a main trunk to see how an entire municipality is faring with COVID, or as isolated as into a senior's home trunk in the part of their sewage that would come out of their line into the main line, to be able to detect patterns around how whether or not it's going up or down in terms of COVID intensity. And of course, this is really important, not just because of COVID today, but because we're expecting to see it, reappear in most countries that have had this earlier. They've seen outbreaks come, up to, 3-6 months out, and we're expecting that from public health authorities to continue perhaps for 18 months. So the ability to be able to see in real time where that's happening has real promise. This is something that we're doing in conjunction with Michigan State University in the US. We may also be partnering with the University of British Columbia, UBC in Vancouver. So we've got big plans here to not only do it locally in Durham, but to roll it out to a number of Ontario and Canadian municipalities. So it's an exciting alternative way to testing. As you know, testing's been a bit of a point where it's been a limitation for a lot of governments because you've got to get enough testing kits out to people. So if you can test in a non-intrusive manner that's extremely effective, I think it's a really good tool for governments to be able to deploy. So I think this has been great because it's been able to show not just Ontario Tech, but universities in a different light, that when you have really smart people working at your institution who are ready to use their expertise, whether that's in stormwater and wastewater, and they're used to studying other contaminants. But that talent can be used and translated into COVID almost immediately. Or if it's in engineering and they're used to creating molds and dyes, and being able to utilize that talent to develop face shields, it's beautiful to be surrounded by people who are brilliant and B, motivated to help. And I think, as you know, what we've seen in our whole community is that people want to help and they aren't as sure how. And so to have very concrete ways that our community has been able to step up has been really gratifying to watch. To a person, I think our whole community wants to be involved, and we're really just a microcosm of what we see in Durham.
Wow, and definitely in terms of helping, I know a lot of people have been asking how they can contribute, be through those caremonger Facebook groups or trying to support local businesses in general. Is there any way that people could get in touch with you guys at UIT/OTU to be able to participate in your projects?
Absolutely. There's a number of ways to get involved. You could let our partnership office know. So you can find emails there. You can certainly email me directly at president@ontariotechu.ca, and I will get you linked in, because this, as I said, has been a really great demonstration of how we work most effectively when we work together. And while that can sound trite, it's been really proven. We have some really strong partnerships with OPG and with other corporations, but even in those strong partnerships that take, thousands of our students over the years and are integrated on our campus every day, even those have been strengthened, because when you pull together and you do something different for the whole community, it's amazing how you think of each partner in a slightly different way and a more robust way. So I tend to be a glass half full kind of person. So I'd like to think that the strength of those partnerships can mean, that Durham can shine, and that, we have a really bright future ahead of us. And you come through something pretty tough on everyone. It's really good to think about, well, what are you going to leverage to do differently so that the new normal has a lot of positives to it, in addition to the challenges we know we'll face.
Yeah, definitely overcoming challenges is kind of the best way to bring people together, that shared trauma sort of concept, for sure.
Absolutely.
What has been the biggest challenge that you guys have been facing, or something that really was a challenge to overcome that stands out to you?
Well, certainly to begin with, it was the notion of how do we, move our operations online and keep all of our students safe. And so that was something that I found really gratifying, in the sense that we made that decision on March the 12th, which, if I don't have my dates wrong, I remember it well because it was late in the evening on a Thursday, and we closed down for the Friday, and we had to cancel some exams on the Saturday. But by the Monday, we were fully online. And that was the fastest post-secondary institution that I'm aware of in terms of how quickly our staff ramped up to be able to deliver it. And to a person, and I get a great deal of feedback from students when things go wrong, I only heard positive stories. So, was it the perfect experience? No, but I think what students said is that their professors really went out of their way to make sure that the content was strong and that they could finish off their term in a really effective way. And I think that our faculty in general, because we are a younger institution, if you look at our demographics, we do tend to have a faculty complement that's a little bit younger, a little bit more easily understands technology and how to deploy it. And I think that we shone in that time. So it was really nice to see how quickly we were able to transition. So I think that was, one of the toughest things is, as you well know, in being a leader, it's the nights where you sit and you wonder. At the time where we went out to say we were closing our operations and moving to online, there had only been one other university, Laurentian, who had done so, and they really did so because they had some exposure in a mine that had happened to a group of people. So it was very different. At about the same time, Western went out, but when you're two universities or three out of 21 in Ontario, that whole night was a long night because you wonder, have you gone too quickly and are you taking this as too big of a step? But in retrospect, we acted quickly, and everything to do with acting quickly with COVID actually turned out to be the right way to go. So we kept people safe. We ensured that their years were finished properly, not in the way that any of us would have wanted to finish their year, having to push back convocation and everything. But at least, they're going to get their degrees and they'll get their ceremony, and we'll be able to come together and celebrate at an appropriate time when it's safe to do so.
You guys definitely are one of the best schools for innovation and moving very quickly. So it's really cool that you're able to apply that to this new policy change as well.
Yeah, it's been fun to see.
Now, looking forward to sort of the new normal going on. Is there anything from this experience that you guys are going to apply going forward, like more enhanced online?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's a great question. And I think that, when you go through this, very acute online transition, and you are an educational institution, to me, it's only natural that you should be asking yourselves, what did we learn from these 3 weeks? What worked well? What didn't work well? As we prepare for an uncertain future where it looks like, at least a great deal of our operations, if not all of them, will be online in the fall, then how are we going to approach that? And the reality, as you would know, is, once an organization has done that much experimentation, if we put our full curriculum online in the fall, which is the plan to be ready to do so, the truth is we'll just be a different institution. So while we certainly don't want to be a fully online institution, that's not the normal that we want. We want the vibrant campus life. We will be able to deploy technology in a way that I think our students will really resonate with. So the online experience, in some ways, if you think about the new normal that we're trying to strive toward, will mean that the beautiful face-to-face time that you're spending in a lab and that you're spending with your classmates discussing theory probably means that a lot of the static content that universities have been very slow to innovate around can be put in your course shell, and you can watch your lectures at your leisure, etc. And that when you're on campus, you're really feeling like, wow, I'm learning something additional here. I can apply this to life, and I can apply this to my job that I want. And when I'm on campus, it feels like I'm really gaining some valuable skills. And I think that we can lead in that area. And that's really just taking the online experience and saying, okay, we don't want to be an online university, but if we are going to be a really good blended university, what can we take online and what really is best done face to face? And I think it's incumbent upon a university to reflect like that, given that we're going through this challenge.
Sure. Speaking about that change, I think that's going to be actually an improvement over regular, like the past university life, being able to kind of get rid of those dinosaur relics of schooling and create this really exciting dynamic experience. I mean, that would be enough to make me want to go back to school again. So,
yeah. And I think, it's just having the frank conversations, right? We know that, I talk to enough students that while it's certainly not the norm, their classes still do exist in a university where there are, PowerPoint presentations that are largely out of the textbooks and where, students don't feel like they're getting their money's worth. And so I'm just sort of, saying out loud what students are already saying. And I'm saying that that shouldn't be the case in 2020. You should really feel like you're getting a value-added education. Our students, as are so ahead of us in terms of their technological use and sophistication. So to think that you should come to university and not have stuff that's very much linked into modern day technology doesn't make a lot of sense to me. So while by no means do we want to be fully online, because if this taught us anything, it taught us that the human bonds are so important and that we crave the experience of being on a campus and actually being linked to other human beings. we want to do so in a really value-added environment where people feel like, okay, this university gets it. I love the feeling of being around my classmates and my friends, and I feel that way on campus, but I feel as though they value my time, and the stuff that I can get online is stuff that I don't need to be sitting in a lecture theater for 3 hours listening to something for. And it's that conversation is way overdue, in my opinion.
Yeah, and they talk about how everyone can get like fogged at any given time in a lecture. 20% of people are fogged out, so
That's
being
right.
able to look back over everything and follow it, I think, is a
Yeah.
pretty cool improvement to that. In terms of adding value to the education, you guys have always been a really good source of funding and innovation towards entrepreneurship. Uh, is there anything in this current situation that you guys are doing to facilitate change towards new businesses and this new normal of business?
Yeah, and it's such a good question because, as you know, that the small and medium-sized businesses, but particularly the small and the sole proprietorships, something, a great organization that somebody owns by themselves, and they might have service contracts. These are the kinds of organizations that, if I can be frank, really pay the bills, right? They're the ones that are paying taxes. They're the ones that are allowing us to make these big spends at a federal level. They're the guts of an economy, and these people have been hurt the most. So many of them have not been able to qualify for, one of the different federal grants for various reasons, because they are a sole proprietorship, or at a very basic level. So they're going to need a hand to get back up to speed, or they may take the opportunity to slightly retool and reshape their business in a slightly different direction. And we're certainly going to be there through our Brilliant Catalyst innovation incubator to provide online support. So we've committed to providing free online support, from everything to, as basic as, how do you get your website up and running? How do you do search optimization, to very, detailed stuff of, are you ready for Series A funding? How do we prepare you for that kind of a pitch, etc., knowing that we've got entrepreneurs at all levels of the readiness scale. And I would just add that, our incubator program runs a summer program in addition to its outreach activities. And that summer program this year, usually full for us is about 60 individuals, and we've got about 185 individuals representing over 35 firms signed up, and it's filled, which is great. But it tells you the need is immense. So the more that we can get different tools and seminars online and available to people, the better. Because I think that as we come through this, we can't emphasize enough the importance of the entrepreneur and the small business owner. And it doesn't have to be a sexy tech business. It can be your restaurateur to, your really important dry cleaner. All of these people need a hand and are going to need a bit of support. And to the extent that we can provide that, we feel really proud in doing so. These are just essential pieces of our economy moving forward.
Wow. Have you guys identified any sort of specific tool that seems to be the most important or the most helpful to the people that have been reaching out to you for support right now?
Well, it's a really interesting question. And as you can imagine, it really just depends on what stage that business is in. So if it's in a very sort of nascent stage and it's a sole proprietorship, the tendency is, the real question for them is around cash flow, right? The cash just doesn't exist, and cash is king right now. So, they're really looking for people who have been through this, how you stretch every dollar. And a lot of people are just looking for advice, right? When you do have to do a bit of marketing, you do have to do a bit of inventory, etc. What is the proper proportion? So having people who've been through really tough recessions before in these situations that we can put into short videos to help people, so that it's not some theoretical view of what do you do. It's really practical around what may have worked for an individual, with the caveats that, hey, depending on your business, you might have a slightly different mix. but at least it doesn't make the individual feel quite as isolated running their business as they do today, thinking there's nobody here to support me. So we're trying to get the word out that we're here to support. And I think that different levels of business will see different tools as being applicable to them. And that's great, right? Because there is no one size fits all. But if we can help and be known as helping companies who are looking to start up in any industry, to me, that's a win, as to be thought of as a go-to place. So we're certainly working with the region and their task force, the city of Oshawa, and many others to make sure that there's links to what we're doing in their recovery plan, so that in as many places as possible, people can find us who may not be thinking about us immediately when they think of, I'm running a sole proprietorship and I need help. They may not think of a university, but in time, we hope they will.
Yeah, that's definitely my first go was more like the chamber side. So I definitely haven't
Yeah.
taken advantage of any of the university programs yet, but it sounds like you guys are doing a great job. You working with the towns and the MPs, is there sort of a connection that you guys are making specifically? I've had a lot of members of the regional council speak about how they're excited to work with you guys. What's kind of happening on that front?
Yeah, well, as you would know, so being a university, we've got to work with all levels of government, and this is a great time for Durham. COVID has been a tough thing, but everything else was shaping up that this would be Durham's time. So I would love to see us accelerate out of this. I know that Chair Henry shares that view. So I actually think we've got a group of mayors in Durham who all know how to work together. So it's a very a good time for us. In addition to that, as you know, in our provincial government, we have a number of cabinet ministers in the Durham region who are great friends of the university and are great friends of the Durham region who want to see us succeed. So, Peter Bethlenfalvy, Rod Phillips, Lindsay Park, David Piccini. These are all individuals, Lauren Coe. These are all individuals who have been really active in helping to support the university, for instance, in championing our wastewater and stormwater projects, and who understand the value that we can add to the Durham region and to Ontario and Canada in general. And of course, that carries on to MPs at the federal level who are also doing their very best to look after Durham and to look after Canada. So we're working closely with all levels of government, and what we're finding is we're reaching out more than ever to our government allies, because we have so much overlap in terms of how we'd all like to see economic recovery happen. And during the height of the crisis, getting the protective equipment out to hospitals was not just a local situation. It was all hands on deck, federal, provincial, municipal. So again, we see our partnerships on the government relations side, or on all levels of government, have been enhanced as a result of this, just more connections, more calls. And I think that bodes well for everybody, because I think then people understand what your organization is capable of and who you really are under pressure. And I think that's a big lesson is, what's the leadership like under pressure? And does the organization shine in tangible ways? Or do they tend to just speak? And I'm a big believer in letting your actions speak louder than your words. And I think we've punched above our weight, and I'm really proud of that. So coming out of that, then you hope that your partners remember and you continue to do big things together, because they're more than possible in our region.
For sure. One thing that, speaking myself with John Henry and Jennifer French, they identified that broadband is a real issue in the region right now. And being sort of a school that does a lot of tech and is on the forefront of that, communications, have you guys noticed any sort of issues with your broadband, or have any position on what's going on there?
Well, certainly, that's one of our concerns. So most of our students, we haven't heard a lot of complaints around broadband, but we do realize, and we certainly have faculty who live in more rural locations, and Durham is such a large, greater municipality that we understand that in rural areas that's a real issue. So I'm certainly a champion of broadband being something that helps to level the playing field. In many ways, it's a lot like education, right? You need it as a basic building block to be able to do the other things. So I know certainly in Clarington, and if you speak to Mayor Foster, he'll certainly talk about areas in his district that really don't have high speed and that are problematic, and anything that we can do to lend our voices to increasing those speeds, whether it's to help out small business or to help out our students. We really believe that, you know, you've got to be connected in order to be related and relevant in today's society. So it's seen as a basic need. Our politicians get that, and I think that they've been appropriately pushing for solutions to a problem that really, if you think about it, should go away fairly easily. So I would like to think, with the receptivity of the federal government to this problem as well, it's high on their agenda list to make sure that rural areas have good access to broadband. The time is now to use some of the money that's flowing for, you know, something that's waited, in my opinion, far too long to get solved.
For sure. So is there any major takeaway that you think anyone should be aware of, or particularly within the university and your role, or what should people be thinking about right now?
Well, I think that Ontario Tech is an exciting place, and I think that a great takeaway is to think that, you know, in the toughest times, when we face our toughest crisis, we come together and we provide a really quality experience, and the students feel like they're part of a community and feel cared about. I think that's a really important message going forward, because unfortunately, you know, in other institutions, you can feel like a bit of a student number and, you know, one of many. I like to think that the student experience, you're spending enough money and you're going to university, that it should be about that you feel as though people know who you are, your professors care about you, they show that and demonstrate that even when they have to be at a distance. So for me, it's a really big takeaway to say that, you know, we understand that that's a competitive advantage, and in a time where we really want to come together socially, we'll structure our whole organization around what we think is a value-added interaction with peers and professors, to reshape and rethink what education looks like. So, you know, for people who are thinking about where to go to university, or those who may have made a choice to go to another university, who live in Durham and might, for financial reasons, now be thinking about another place, I would always say give Ontario Tech a look. And as you well know, if you come onto our campus and feel some of the vibrancy, we tend to convert a lot of people who actually make that jump. So, you know, there will be a time in the near future where our campus is alive and well, and as always, I would invite people onto our campus to see for themselves, because it's one thing what the president says, but as I've said already, I think our actions speak louder than our words, and most people who come to see us leave wanting to be a part of the community. So that will be a great, I think, advantage to just keep telling our story and what we're doing.
For sure. I definitely like the campus a lot. It was a great experience. Particularly the library is probably one of the best libraries I've ever been to.
Yeah, no, it's a library that's very student focused. We've added hundreds of more student study spaces. So, you know, libraries are changing with tech and time too. That they used to be all about, you know, where the books are. Now it's all really about how to facilitate, yes, digital resources, but also study space and space for teams to work in, as well as quiet study space. And that's really transformed, and it's a fixture. And of course, we've got a new building going up beside the library, which will be, you know, our student hub. And that's really going to complete our quad. And it's exciting times ahead. Our construction folks went back to work on Monday on our building. So I'm excited because that's 2 days of them being back on the job. And we're looking forward to an opening there in September of 2021, which we had no idea at the time would be so significant, but we'll hope that we're back to complete normal by that date, and it'll be a lot to celebrate.
Well, thank you very much. This is kind of down to my final question, which is, who do you think I should speak to next? Who do you think people need to hear from?
That's a great question. I think we have so many good leaders in our area that I think that people could hear from a lot of the leaders, including, somebody like Rod Phillips, who is our finance minister, but has a lot of great ideas around how do you actually accelerate a recovery. I think that's top of my mind, so that's why he came to mind right away. Peter Bethlenthal, who works as his left hand in the Treasury Board, is also somebody to speak to in our region. That would be right up that alley. And I'd say that, locally, I wouldn't hesitate to say, let's speak to Dan Carter, because he's been at the forefront of ensuring that people think about Oshawa in a completely different way. And I couldn't be more on board for, the Renaissance and what that town can be, because it's got such a vibrant history and it's got such passion around it. And a new chapter is just waiting to be drawn. So those are the three that come to mind right off the top of my head.
Well, thank you very much. I will be sure to chase them down.
All right.
I appreciate all your time today, Dr. Murphy. It was
Okay.
a great conversation.
All right. Thanks so much. Have a good day.